Now, a wild week in President Trump's so-called hush money trial, where Friday's testimony of Trump ex-lawyer Michael Cohen exposed Cohen to be a liar during cross-examination, persisting questions about his credibility. Throughout the week, several Republican allies attended the trial to support the 45th president, including North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, who is also on President Trump's shortlist for his VP running mate, he called it election interference. Joining me now, the man himself with more on the trial and President Trump's White House bid is North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Thanks very much, Governor, for being here this morning.
Good morning, Maria. Great to be with you.
You heard Bobby Kennedy at the top of the show. He wants to be on the debate stage. Should he?
Well, I think President Trump has said if he qualifies, he should be on, but it'll be a great opportunity to expose him as the, Green New Deal spending liberal Democrat that he is. And President Trump versus two Democrats, I think, would be American people would enjoy watching that.
Do you share the concern about Biden's capacity? Do you think they should take drug tests before the debate?
Well, I think the nation has concerns about his capacity, not just during an hour-and-a-half debate, but every single day. And I think that's what this election is going to be about. It's about President Trump is strong, Joe Biden is weak, and it doesn't matter what the topic is, including this week. Joe Biden made some announcements about China tariffs this week, which were incredibly weak, and all they were is really just, supporting the union votes that he's trying to get, where President Trump was the one who really helped wake up America to the threat that China is to our country.
Yeah, let's talk about those tariffs, because we haven't really seen Joe Biden get tough on China at all throughout this 3.5-year period. I mean, for God's sakes, they had a surveillance balloon travel the country, and they didn't take it down until the Carolinas. We've had fentanyl flowing into America, and the underlying components come from China. Obviously, COVID. Leaking from a lab, a COVID cover-up. We've had no accountability whatsoever. And now we see that President Biden is putting in these tariffs in place. Why are you against these tariffs when you know President Trump was even heavier on tariffs and sanctions against China?
Well, I'm not against him, Maria. It's just interesting that Joe Biden in this election year, he's the one that complained about the Trump's tariffs. He's the one that said, if I'm elected, I'll get rid of them. And now he's trying to do kind of a head fake and say, oh, I'm actually strong on China. I'm going to add a few tariffs. But it's only 4% of what President Trump did. I mean, we're talking, a few billion versus President Trump had tariffs on over $300 billion of Chinese goods. That was a real blow to the Chinese and the Chinese economy. What Joe Biden is, he's protecting industries that are his voting blocks. He's trying to protect, unions in America, whether they're in auto or steel. That's what he's trying to do. And it's not going to be effective at all. And it's all just political pandering on him and his administration. When they go to China, all they talk about is climate, and China is the world's largest polluter and becomes a bigger polluter every 2 weeks as they open up a coal plant. And they're the largest importer of oil and gas in the world. They have to import food every day. We have all kinds of levers. We could walk softly and carry a big stick, as Theodore Roosevelt said, because we've got food security, we've got energy security, and Joe Biden and his cabinet never even addressed these issues with China. President Trump will do that, as he did before, because he's respected. They respect what he is, and he'll bring the heat to be able to negotiate with China. Joe Biden's not delivering on that.
What value do you believe you bring to the ticket if you are, in fact, named the VP candidate?
Well, I don't think it's about that. I think that this election is about the top of the ticket, and I'm not supporting and campaigning for President Trump for a cabinet position or a VP. As a governor of an energy-producing state, I can tell you, every American, we can't take 4 more years of Joe Biden, because we're crushing U.S. energy production. We're crushing the U.S. economy. Energy is what's driving inflation. It's in America, and inflation is killing every American. And Joe Biden doesn't understand the economy. The guy's never created a job. He was elected to the Senate before I was able to vote. And so President Trump is the key to this whole thing, and that's what we've got to be focused on between now and November, is getting him back in the White House.
Well, similar vein, he hadn't done anything about the wide open border, and now suddenly we're hearing leaks that he may do an executive order. Would that change anything in terms of your confidence in Joe Biden?
No, I mean, it's a disaster. I've been down to the border myself.
Yeah.
I'm not down there for a photo shoot. I'm down there because we've had North Dakota National Guard helping to support our border patrol and help to protect this country. But it's a disaster down there.
Governor, it's good to see you this morning. We'll be watching your work. Thank you, sir.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.